Members, good afternoon. We have a quorum. It's the appointed time. Welcome, members, to the policy briefing-cum-meeting of the panel on development. Agenda item number 1, information paper issued since last meeting. Since last meeting, there is an information paper issued. It's listed on the agenda. Agenda item number 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. Please refer to the document CB brackets 11346/2024/01 as well as 02. List of outstanding items for discussion and list of follow-up actions. The next meeting will be held on the afternoon of the 26th of November 2024 from 2:30 p.m. The administration proposed to discuss these three items. 1. PWP Public Works Program number 7786CL Tongchong New Town Extension Site Formation and Infrastructure Works Phase 2. 2. Proposals for promoting elderly-friendly building design. And 3. Development proposal of Ngao Tam Mei. Do members agree to discuss these three items in the next meeting? There is no objection from members. Thank you, members. On to the next agenda item. Let's first invite representatives from the administration to join us. Agenda item number 3, briefing by the Secretary for Development on the Chief Executive's 2024 policy address. Many members have already requested to speak. They have pressed a button. Welcome, Secretary and her team. Members who have already pressed a button, they are Mr. Dominic Lee, Dr. Chow Man Kong, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Perry Yu, Mr. Andrew Lam, Ms. Connie Lam, Ms. Chen Yut Meng, Mr. Edward Leung, Mr. Edward Lau, Mr. Michael Tin, and Mr. Chen Hop Fong, and myself. Please take your seat, and I will first invite the Secretary to give us an introduction. Thank you, Chairman. I will first give a brief introduction. The details have been listed in the documents. I hope members see the determination of the administration to create land continuously and take forward infrastructure development. We are trying to attempt new development modes to increase speed and efficiency, and we also want to enhance the participation from the private market. I'd like to first talk about the 10-year forecast of developable land supply. Every year, we brief the public on the land supply of spade-ready land. Starting from the next financial year to 2034 to 35, the amount of developable land is 3,000 hectares. We can see the distribution is different across the 10-year period. The reason is that there are different developments, so ranging from 150 hectares to 450 hectares in total. There is a variation in this 10-year period. For projects that have already started, it's easier to have a prediction. We can take into account the progress of the works. For the projects that have not yet been started, we base our forecast on the statutory approval, resource allocation, as well as the progress of the works. We make reasonable presumptions in order to have a forecast of the developable land supply. Members, you can take a more macro approach. A few years ago, all the way up to 2048, in this 3-decade period, from the perspective of housing, transport infrastructures, we also need land. So we want to have a total of 7,000 hectares of land in 30 years' time. averaging 200 hectares every year. In this 10-year period, the latest forecast of about 3,000 hectares aligns with the target levels outlined in our vision. Regarding the supply of the spade-ready land, as you can see from the table online, we have annual figures, and we also set out the main source of the site of the land. 60% of these pieces of land are from the Northern Metropolis. 300 hectares are from Khao Yi Chau Artificial Island Project. By the end of this year, the Khao Yi Chau Artificial Island Project, the reclamation EIA environmental impact assessment will be completed and submitted in order to kickstart the statutory approval procedures. If we have the green light next year, by the end of 2027, that is within the current term of the government, we will start the reclamation procedures. So we include the 300 hectares of land in the coming 10 years forecast. As I mentioned, 60% of the land will come from the Northern Metropolis. So naturally, we will continue with the work in relation to the Northern Metropolis. Works will be taken forward at full steam. We have already issued an information paper to the panel on development. We hope that we can start to seek funding approval from the Public Works Subcommittee regarding the Centennial project. We will also announce the land use plans for the remaining 3 new development areas NDA. We have not yet announced the use of these NDAs. They are Ngau Tam Mei, New Territories, North Newtown, and Ma Chou Long. Of these areas, as Chairman mentioned, we will discuss Ngau Tam Mei in the next meeting. We will give you further information on the next occasion. We have set aside 50 hectares of land in Ngau Tam Mei. It will be used to take forward the development of the North Metropolis University Town, public hospital, and a 3rd medical school. In this year, we will also initiate the rezoning process for Sandy Ridge this year. We want to expand the capacity and set aside 10 hectares of the land for the construction of data centers. Just now I touched upon land planning. I want members to see the determination of the administration to put in place development modes of some projects. When it comes to land creation, there are a couple of different directions. We want to promote the participation from the private sector. We want to enhance quality, speed, and efficiency. We are no longer just after the construction of housing projects and other infrastructures. We want to promote tourism, recreation, yacht tourism, as well as the education hub. We want to develop these industries. Regarding how to diversify the development mode of the Northern Metropolis, we have identified 3 large-scale land disposals. They are Fanling North, Centennial Pub, and Hung Shui Kiu Ha Chun. Each of these sites is around 10 to 20 hectares. We will conduct market study regarding these 3 sites. We will invite the submission of expression of interests. For each pilot site, we want to have the participation of private developers and how much private housing can be accommodated, how much public facilities can be accommodated. We'd like to tap the view of the private market. In other words, when you submit a tender, are you willing to submit the tender to the administration, given the fact that we have a couple of requirements for the developers to meet? If they think that the timeline of the administration is too aggressive and they need to make adjustments accordingly, they can let us know. After the expression of interests, we want to finish the tendering exercise of one pilot site next year. So far, the statutory planning procedures have already been completed, and we are resuming land, or we are going to do so in the near future. In the Northern Metropolis, the large-scale land disposal covers a wide area of land. The administration will set up a company to take part in the operation of the large-scale land disposal. We will have pilot industrial parks. We often say that industrial parks are an important area in the Northern Metropolis. So apart from granting of land, selling of land, an enterprise will be responsible for the industry of these pieces of land. We want the administration to be responsible for the operation of industrial parks as well. So when it comes to attracting businesses and investments as well as daily operation, the administration can take the first step. We have selected Hung Shui Kiu Ha-chun, some of the logistics sites therein, to be the pilot industrial park. Will the company be a statutory one, or will it be a company set up under the financial secretary? What will the operation be? What will the scale be? We want to make announcements in the first quarter of 2025. We'll let you know the details in due course. Now I'd like to talk about 3 projects in relation to eco-recreation, tourism, economy. We will also invite the expression of interests. It's not just an ordinary public consultation. We're really going to conduct a study in the market. On different occasions, we already explained to members that we are conducting planning studies. As you can see on the PowerPoint slides, Chim Pei Choi Pak Nai, Exclamatory, and South Lantau, they're different from the 3 large-scale land as mentioned above. We haven't yet finished the planning statutory procedures. What is unique about these areas? In the first quarter of 2025, we still want to invite expression of interests for these 3 projects. We want to tap the market for their views. We want to collect useful information to guide the master plan. In other words, we want to see whether this is viable in terms of implementation. And when the private market is aware of what the administration is going to do, they can make preparation in advance. So we will be able to start tendering exercises as early as possible so we can enhance speed and efficiency. The next slide is about 3 projects. We have 3 large-scale land disposals, and we also have 3 projects about promoting ecotourism. On this slide, you can see 3 projects about yacht tourism, Hong Ham, Exclamatory, and Aberdeen Typhoon Shelter Expansion Area. We are conducting planning studies regarding these 3 sites. There are high quality water bodies in the vicinity of these sites, so if we can develop yacht tourism and the related hardware, not only can we take forward the industry of yacht tourism, but we can also promote yacht trading, repair, as well as water activities. We can also promote recreational facilities and F&B industry in the land. By the middle of next year, through appropriate methods, we will invite the private sector to tell us their views on these areas. We want to accommodate some 100 to 200 yacht berths. We've talked about 3 sets of projects about inviting expressions of interests. The other policy is in relation to developing Hong Kong into an international education hub. Apart from the Northern Metropolis University town, the policy address also mentions student hostels and facilities are also lacking right now. In order to provide these facilities in the near future, we will work with the Education Bureau. We want to roll out measures to encourage the market to make good use of the existing hotels and other commercial buildings. We want them to modify these hotels and buildings into student hostels. We will roll out facilitation measures, and we want to have it ready in the first half of 2025. There are a good number of construction projects, so costs are close to the heart of the public, I believe. In the relevant subcommittee, discussion is in full swing. We discussed reasons for the high construction costs. Within this year, we hope to roll out concrete measures for reducing construction costs. We need to introduce diversified procurement mode. We also need to use innovative technologies, streamline approval processes, and review the standards that have been in place for a long period of time. Our target is to better control the construction costs. After making concrete recommendations, starting from next year, we will roll out these measures. This August, we set up the Building Technology Research Institute. In the future, this institute will spearhead innovation in the industry and sets out the development strategy at full steam. The institute is going to roll out an MIC certification system. This MIC manufacturer certification scheme will encourage more developers to make good use of this technology, and it can also become an advantage industry in the GBA. On buildings, we have 2 main areas. One, the buildings ordinance, and the next area is how we can introduce more designs that are favorable to elderly. So starting from, in November and in December, we will give you more information about elderly-friendly building designs. The topics are already in the documents, so that's my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. There are 2 words that appear multiple times in the policy address. They are reform and develop. We have to reform our society and economy, and we have to do better. To achieve this, the Development Bureau will work hard, and the Secretary has explained about the work of the Development Bureau in detail. After me, there are still 3 members who want to speak: Mr. Tan Kia-pyu, Mr. Gary Chang, and Mr. Tony Chen. Mr. Dominic Lee, 4 minutes, please. Thank you, Chairman. Land supply issue is quite serious in Hong Kong. That is why multiple measures have been proposed in the policy address to develop land, especially the northern metropolis. I think that by increasing the land supply, we can improve people's life, and I support this. I would like to ask about Kaohsiung Artificial Islands and the feasibility study of it. I think that members of the public are confused. We are faced with serious budget deficit. We have to spend so much on the artificial islands. Can we really afford the construction? In the paper, you mentioned that you have measures to solve the problems, but how do we actually lower the construction costs? Can we make the project affordable for the government? When we are developing the Northern Metropolis and Kaohsiung Artificial Islands in parallel, well, the construction industry is faced with a manpower crunch. Do we have enough manpower to carry out these 2 large-scale development projects? Will the projects be delayed and construction costs be increased because of the manpower crunch? We are faced with cost and manpower issues. Maybe we can accord priority to different projects. Maybe we should take forward the Northern Metropolis project first and then proceed with the Kaohsiung Artificial Islands later. Thank you. Secretary. Electrical members and members of the public are concerned about the land use and construction cost of all projects. We have to study projects in an orderly manner. For Kaohsiung Artificial Islands, we're working on the environmental impact assessment and engineering design. We have not started working on the financing of the project. Why? That's because after we have completed the EIA and the engineering project, well, we will only start reclamation in 2027. After site formation, we can only start construction a few years afterwards. Our economy changes every year. Same goes for our government fiscal position. With the improved economy, our fiscal position will also become better. So we don't have to, well, before the detailed design's been completed, we shouldn't be too hasty in coming to a conclusion on how much the project will cost. We have to ask ourselves if we need such land in 30 years' time. If we need land, then we have to proceed with the project. We have actually delayed the project for Kaohsiung Artificial Islands last year. When we talked about our 10-year land supply forecast, we expected that by 2025, by the end of 2025, we would start reclamation. But after delaying the project, we are going to start reclamation by 2027 only. And the 10-year land supply forecast has decreased compared with our last year forecast. So we have prolonged the land development process for our 1,000 hectares target. This will help us with cost control as well. And you ask about resources allocation for carrying out both the projects in parallel. Well, while we have these 2 projects that are ongoing, They're at different stages. In 10 years' time, Northern Metropolis will offer some 1,700 hectares. But for Kaohsiung Artificial Islands, we're talking about 300 hectares. So in these 10 years, we are focusing on the Northern Metropolis. For Kaohsiung Artificial Islands, we haven't even started the reclamation. We have not started site formation or superstructure construction. So in terms of manpower demand, the issues is not here yet. Next, Mr. Chao-Man Kwong. Thank you, the Education Bureau and the Development Bureau for adopting my suggestion, that is to improve hostel facilities for students. This is very important because there is great demand for student hostels in universities, and it is said that as at 2028 there will be a 120,000 deficit in terms of hostel places, and the land sale target has not been met and is deficient by 20%. This will affect the income of the government. It is said in the policy address that we should encourage the market to convert hotels and other commercial buildings into hostels on a self-financing basis to increase the supply. I wonder why industrial buildings are not included. Under the revitalizing industrial building scheme, there were some 24 industrial buildings being converted into hotels in 2010 to 2016. The media and the TV program hosts have been asking the same questions. Why don't we convert hotels into university student hostels? The vacancy rate of industrial buildings is about 930,000 square meters. That's the figure of the RVD, and that accounts for about 12% of the vacancy rate of commercial and industrial buildings. So will the government include industrial buildings into the plan for conversion so that we can meet the demand more quickly? That's my first question. Second, on the development of Northern Metropolis, we definitely support that. Brownfield operators are bound to be affected. They may be material suppliers. Maybe we should promote and step up the development of multi-story buildings for modern logistics. We now try to draw for enterprises, and we are afraid of enterprises leaving us. So we have to retain them. Apart from Northern Metropolis, in Lantau, maybe we can work with the Western Guangzhou to offer opportunities. In Lantau, well, it's near the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Maybe we can set aside sites there that are close to the ocean with transport facilities for these brownfield operators, because some brownfield operators may not be able to move into the multi-story buildings. We should try to keep them here because the industry helps a lot of different families to make a living. Secretary, Mr. Chow asked why we don't purchase industrial buildings to convert them into hostels. Well, that's because pre-existing industrial buildings are usually located in industrial area, and the statutory land used for such sites are for industrial purposes. Recently, we tried to relax restrictions for industrial land. We try to allow only for commercial uses instead of residential uses. If we are to provide accommodation in industrial buildings, then there will be a conflict between industrial land and residential land. We have to ask the developers to apply for rezoning of their industrial land. and such application would likely not be approved. Even if you try to apply, it takes time for you to conduct the relevant studies. So we tend to focus on commercial buildings and hotels. For these premises, they will just have to seek approval for a simple planning rezoning of land use, and we have a simplified procedures for such application. Applicants will be able to convert their premises into student hostels very easily. Regarding our brownfield operators, can we set aside sites in the western part of Hong Kong that is Lantau for these brownfield operators so that they can work with the relevant brownfield operators in Jiangmen and Zhuhai in the mainland? For logistics and go-downs operators, we're looking into setting aside sites in Long Ku Tan for them. Because we have this north-south dual engine approach, for the south side, we want to focus on conservation. For the northern part, we focus on building an airport city. And there we have logistics land. For operators that need outdoor operation, we are studying the reclamation of Long Ku Tan.
Oh, come on.
Thank you, Secretary. Members, please be succinct and allow the administration sufficient time to get back to you. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. Well, Secretary, you mentioned two development modes. One, large-scale land disposal with private developers, and the other is the administration-led industrial park. I talked to enterprises that have interest in development. They expressed their concerns, and I'd like to relay the concerns to the administration. Is it possible to combine these two development modes? In other words, can we develop industrial parks with large-scale land disposal? A developer will spearhead the development of an industrial park. When developers submit tenders for developing industrial parks, the government will give them a series of requirements and indicators, say the intended results, and so on. But there's a lease period of the industrial park, and there may be changes in the industrial development. So the restrictions or requirements may not be in touch with the reality as time moves on. Is there any mechanism in the course of large-scale land disposal to move with the times in relation to the requirements and indicators? The goal is to keep it in touch with the reality. We have both successful and unsuccessful experience. For example, say in the Henderson incident, when the company is faced with financial difficulties and fails to deliver the project, will the administration step in? Will the administration have any plan B? Large-scale land disposal involves the introduction of capital, the flow of capital, and so on. We have a Northern Metropolis Development Office. It does not have power to spearhead the development of other industries. It only oversees development in the Northern Metropolis, and then enterprises will have to discuss with the relevant bureau. Is it possible to empower the Northern Metropolis Development Office to coordinate the relevant policies and provide one-stop support to the enterprises? Thank you. First of all, when it comes to large-scale land disposal, we don't intend to impose a lot of restrictions or requirements. You can imagine there are large parcels of land and we need to market these pieces of land. We need to sell them. So what infrastructures can be accommodated? Is there any park? How many units of private housing? How much commercial floor area? Is already been set out in the development plan. Say there are commercial areas in the large-scale land. When the company wins the tender, we require the public facilities or infrastructures to be responsible for by the government, whereas the company will have to comply with the relevant parameters in relation to private development. We don't impose any restriction on the details of the development, so we give developer a lot of latitude. Developers have already paid the land premium in advance, so in case of any adjustments in the middle of the project, the government won't step in. Well, the relevant piece of land will in the end go back to the government in case of any hiccups or problems in the middle of the construction or development of the area. In the upcoming expression of interest exercise, we will also ask the interested developers. For these projects, do you want to be responsible for the operation? In other words, you don't have to hand the piece of land back to the government. Or, after conducting site formation, will you give it back to the government for the government to grant the site for other companies to be responsible for the development of the area? So we will have regard to the developer. We will wait for the response from the developers in order to prepare for the tendering exercises in the future. So that is my reply. Thank you, Chairman. Well, in large-scale land disposal, will there be one developer or more than one developer working with the government? A large-scale land is of 10 to 20 hectares. It's quite large. So it's quite difficult for a single developer to be responsible for the entire project. So I believe different developers will form a consortium and be responsible for the project. Well, but can we develop industrial parks by means of large-scale land disposal? Yes, indeed. It's possible. So for the 3 pilot sites, they are Fanling North, Hung Shui Kiu Ha-chun, and Sentin Technopark. In Fanling North, the industry of the Northern Metropolis is not concentrated in Fanling North. For Hung Shui Kiu, there may be commercial parcels of land. By the end of this year, when we announce the expression of interest, we will have the concrete area and land parcels and their use. Next, Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, Chairman. As a representative of the tourism industry, I'm glad to see the policy address mentioning policies supporting tourism. There are also cross-bureau support measures to boost tourism in Hong Kong. 3 topics caught my eye. 1, ecotourism, yacht tourism, and waterfront landmarks. I support these 3 areas. When it comes to ecotourism, apart from the 3 sites mentioned in the paper, if the market identifies sites in society of potential, is it possible to develop these areas? Is there any relevant mechanism? For yacht tourism, there's much public discussion. But as I understand, it's not sightseeing on boats and so on. As far as I understand, we need to prepare the foundation well in order to build more yacht berths. We need to have hotels, ancillary facilities, so that we can promote yacht tourism. When other yachts in other countries come to Hong Kong, then we can promote high-end consumption. I hope we can have a solid foundation when it comes to the number of yacht berths. When it comes to the yachts coming in and out of Hong Kong, do you have any policies? We have been talking about individual yacht travel scheme for quite some time. Thank you, Secretary. Apart from Chin Pei Choi, Park Night, South Lantau, Lama, when it comes to eco-tourism, do we welcome other sites in the community as well? Well, in the long run, we definitely keep our mind open. But we have manpower and infrastructure resource priority to accord. For the 3 sites I mentioned, we have already started work in the area, or we're going to start work soon. That's exactly why we have already laid a foundation. When there are new proposals, the developers need to have already started the preparation. Otherwise, it's quite difficult to simply pinpoint a point on the map and get started with the works. As we have already laid the groundwork for the developments in these 3 sites, it's actually a good start. When it comes to yacht tourism, yes, it concerns the entire industry chain. We need to provide yacht berths. It's not simply sightseeing boat rides. Some visitors want to have high-end consumption. They want to have yacht trading. For some overseas visitors to Hong Kong, they may come to Hong Kong in a yacht. That's why we want to cater for their needs as well. Regarding the expression of interest, we focus on the hardware aspect. We proposed these 3 areas for the facilities. What can they propose? We haven't yet come to the software aspect. However, today we already have some existing measures. There are incoming yachts arriving in Hong Kong, be it CNED, the Marine Department. They already have a mechanism in place. But of course, when there is a rise in the number of yachts coming to Hong Kong, how will adjustments be made? That is the next step to be taken by the administration. Well, Secretary, regarding yacht berths, apart from these 3 areas, some members of the public proposed Kai Tak and Kwun Tong. You know, they form quite a large water body. It used to be quite smelly, but the situation has already improved. Can we develop it into a shelter for some yachts to be berthed over there? The airport is also mentioned in society. So, do you think we can consider the old site and the new sites as well? Well, in the airport authority Hong Kong, that is AAHK, is taking the lead. And as I understand, there will be a concrete proposal next year. They are going to build a yacht facility in the water body. They are already laying the groundwork for the project. Regarding Kai Tak, whether inside and outside the council, I understand there are people advocating making good use of the water body in Kai Tak. Lama, Aberdeen, Hong Kong. The reasons why we have these three project areas are that we are looking into the land planning. That's exactly why we have come up with these three projects. When it comes to the typhoon shelter and the water body in Kwun Tong or in Kai Tak, can we have a yacht club where we keep our mind open? And we have the Energizing Kowloon East office. Let's first of all take a look at the expression of interest in relation to these three projects before we decide how we can proceed with the project in Kai Tak. Thank you.
所謂議員。
Next, Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you. Chairman, I noticed that in this year's policy address, it is said that we will create signature ecotourism routes. Because we've been talking about eco-recreation and economy, I've all along been concerned about the tourism development of the Western Sai Kung. But in the policy address, only Chin Pei Choi, Pak Nai, South Lantau are being mentioned. But in Western Sai Kung, there are a lot of different resources, and we have water activities as well as ecotourism. But there is no long-term planning for its development. Let me give you an example. In Sai Kung, we have a lot of beautiful bays. I'm sure that the secretary is aware of it, and we have abundant resources there. But we don't have a systemic planning for us to create a tourism culture and to drive economy in the district. Well, let me give you an example. This morning I was in Clearwater Bay and I visited some villages. There are water activities in some villages, for example, kayak, standboarding. These activities can drive income for villagers and taxi drivers. But we don't have any regulations for such water activities. Some operators told me that the Marine Department and the Lands Department took enforcement action. They didn't allow the operators to place their boats or paddles in the waters nor on land. We're trying to develop leisure and recreational tourism. Shouldn't we help the existing operators? Shouldn't we establish regulations to guide them instead of taking their business away? Because we don't have a plan and don't have a guide, it's very difficult for the enforcement agencies to take action, and operators as well as tourists suffer. A lot of mainland tourists come to Clearwater Bay to conduct water activities. These are good for our health. When we are developing our eco-recreational tourism industry chain, we have to consider this. Now, in terms of eco-recreational tourism, I hope that the government can release sites of different uses. We can unleash green belts, for example, so that we can operate hostels, bazaars, agriculture land, and carry out water activities in such zones. Thank you. Secretary. The member said that there are a lot of beautiful bays in Sai Kung, and the members of the public want to make good use of them. I think that they're asking for simple facilities such as landing steps and seats or spaces for fishermen to place their yachts. so that they don't place them at government land. So I think that the member is not talking about land use planning or development of major transport infrastructure. Regarding the examples that you gave, we can improve them just by providing landing steps. We're willing to consider it. Some of them, well, if you're talking about licensing of yachts, then we have to work with the Transport and Logistics Department as well as the Marine Department. We can be district-oriented to see if we can improve some of the areas in a district. As for whether we can rezone green belts to accommodate hostel operation, under our town planning procedures, you can apply to operate hostels in green belts or other zones. You can go to the town planning board for application. I know that these applications are not easily granted, and it's for a reason. Because if you are to operate hostels at green belt, then there will be concerns regarding water supply, hygiene, and environmental impact. There could be traffic implication as well. Also, local residents may be worried that their environment will be damaged or destroyed. So we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. We cannot just say that it's okay for everyone to operate hostels at Greenbelt. But we're willing to look at each cases on a case-by-case basis. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. The policy address sets a lot of details regarding development of land. Let me talk about 2 points. First, Kaoicha Artificial Islands. I think that in terms of strategic development of Hong Kong, this project is necessary. And I thank the Secretary for standing your ground and insisting on developing Kaoicha Artificial Islands. Compared to the last year forecast, the schedule has been delayed, as mentioned by the Secretary. Regarding Kaoicha Artificial Islands reclamation, it's not just about land supply or land bank. It's crucial for a Western transport connectivity. But this point has not been, this point has been ignored by the Legislative Council very often. Without the Kaoicha Artificial Islands, it undermines our connectivity with the Trunk Road 11, for example, and the focus will be on Kowloon West and Chengyi instead. And we have to face these issues squarely. Now, coming back to the large-scale land disposal approach, this is nothing new. Since our unification, Cyberport, West Kowloon District, they are projects that have adopted large-scale land disposal approach. I hope that when you're adopting such approach, you will learn from our past experience, if not lessons. I'd like to make 2 points. I think that we have a capable government leveraging on an efficient market. I think that this is great. Second, I support the invitation for expression of interest for the project because we are undergoing a structural change in our economy. I've said time and again, in terms of financing for major infrastructure projects, there could be difficulties. If we insist on only taking forward the project after land resumption, then there will be challenges. I think that maybe we have to also look into our financial system when we transform. Are we going to just recover cost or speed up infrastructure development or help the economy transform by adopting this large-scale land disposal approach? We cannot achieve all goals at a time. So please please set out your questions. Secretary. Thank you for supporting the Kaohsiung Artificial Islands. I've stressed time and again the importance of this project. It's not just about land supply. Of course, 1,000 hectares is important, but Kaohsiung Artificial Islands is a brand new piece of site. I'm not saying that the government will resume land and develop by ourselves, but I'm talking about government-led development. But it's important that we have land in our bank so that we will not be led by private enterprises. If you look at the map of Hong Kong, Kaohsiung Artificial Islands, including the water bodies, is in the middle of our city and is well connected. We can connect Kaohsiung Artificial Islands to the northern metropolis, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and the western Greater Bay Area. It's of a very important strategic position. If we have this piece of newly created land, then we can try out a lot of new town planning procedures and approaches. But then, of course, we don't have to start discussing it right now, but we have such a room for exploration. We have a number of examples of large-scale land disposal, say Western Kowloon Cultural District. It's not just a land parcel. We have a statutory organization that runs the place with government participation. That's similar to industrial parks that are to be managed by a company established by the government. We are inviting expression of interest for the 3 land parcels. That's about land sale. Developers will have to pay land premium to the government when they want to develop the 3 land parcels. I'm sure that when they propose the land premium, they would have accounted for the cost of construction and infrastructure. So when we set our reserve price, we have to be practical because we're asking the developers to form the site and build infrastructures and so on. So the reserve price must be different from the price of regular land sale. So we want to first invite expressions of interest from the market. After we collect enough information, we can be more practical when we set out our tender documents. Now, we've spent much time on this question. Next, Ms. Chen Yutming. Thank you, Chairman. I thank the Secretary for her briefing on the 2024 policy address. I have 3 follow-up questions on the Northern Metropolis. It is said that the large-scale land disposal approach will be adopted. The 3 land parcels are in 3 different new development areas. For Santin, it's about INT. Hung Shui Kiu is about logistics and professional services. For Fanling North, it's about housing. So my first question is this. Are we going to assign different purposes to these 3 land parcels? And what conditions will the Development Bureau impose for these 3 land parcels? Second, it is said that the Development Bureau will try to promote yacht tourism, ecotourism, and so on. But in Annex B of the paper, it seems that the tourism products is all about Lama Island and South Lantau. For North District, only Chimpechoy and Pak Nai are included. But for Chimpechoy, it was designed as a blue and green eco-recreational zone. But can the Secretary tell us more about the latest development of the blue-green recreational circle? When will we start promoting the development of yacht tourism and ecotourism in these 2 places? And we are redeveloping some of the boundary control points in the northern metropolis. After redevelopment, from the perspective of planning, will these boundary control points be able to be reached by traffic and transport?
Thank you. Boundary control points are under the purview of another bureau, so I'm sorry I can't give you an answer in relation to the redevelopment of the port. Regarding the concrete arrangements, I'll have to pass it to the relevant bureau. Regarding blue-green ecotourism circle, what is being planned, I will give the floor to Mr. Vic Yao in a moment to give you more information. Regarding another question, it was asked for the 3 land parcels selected. They are situated in areas with a theme, say Santintano Pope. They have the theme of INT for Hung Shui Kiu, high-end logistics and professional services. So does it mean the 3 land parcels have these respective characteristics? Well, not necessary. The main theme I mentioned, from west to east, we have different themes. But over these large parcels of land, we need to consider very carefully if somebody comes to bid the relevant land parcel, the project needs to be cost effective. After all, we're talking about market participation. When we request the developers to work on different infrastructures, we need to think what projects would allow the developers to make profits. At least the profits can offset the expenditure of the developers, or even the developers can make money, say private housing, commercial buildings, and so on. There may not be huge profits soon after the commencement of the project. Say for INT projects, it takes time to make profits. You won't make profits overnight. So will the land parcel feature the respective characteristic? Not necessary. We emphasize there are government projects and there are also profitable projects, say housing, commercial facilities. The developer can still make profits. Mr. Vic Yao, please be succinct. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your question. In the east of the Northern Metropolis in 2023, in the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda announced earlier on, the focus is not large-scale land development. Instead, we focused on promoting ecotourism through human factors. Say Robin's Nest Country Park has become the 25th country park in Hong Kong. It's also a new tourism resource. The other one is Shuttlecock gradual opening up. The preparation is underway. Robin's Nest will become a new tourism destination. It will also become a new place which we can develop together with Shenzhen in order to develop it into a better eco-corridor. In relation to Shuttlecock, the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau will continue to see how we can better manage the history resources to develop it into a low-density but high-quality tourism destination. With the redevelopment of the Shuttlecock Boundary Control Point (BCP), we can see how we can better serve cross-boundary visitors, but also better serve the visitors coming to Shuttlecock. It's also a place for visitors to go to some outlying islands in Yanqiao Tong through Shuttlecock. So Shuttlecock can act as a node to be connected to Yanqiao Tong. These can be good tourism products, and this is exactly our work direction. 9 members are going to speak. There are policy issues, so I let the secretary answer in greater detail, but we need to manage time well. So there won't be any second round in this agenda item. We have one more agenda item to go through today. Question and answers included 4 minutes. Just now, I wasn't that strict with time limit. It took about 6 minutes to answer one member's question. So we need to go through another agenda item as well, so please be succinct. Next, Mr. Edward Leung. Thank you, Chairman. The policy address mentioned the timeline in relation to the Northern Metropolis and KYC Artificial Island. Land resources are very important. $700 million will be expanded on building a gallery in Wan Chai North to introduce the Northern Metropolis and KYC Artificial Island. The land cost is not included either. There are also many views in the community about whether it is necessary to use this piece of land to build a gallery. Can we use 2 floors in Grade A commercial buildings to set up this gallery? This will allow us to save a lot of resources. Wan Chai North can be used to develop the economy. We can have facilities to improve tourism experience. So will the administration consider vacating this piece of land to boost tourism? Will you consider building the gallery in Category A commercial building? We have large-scale land disposal. It is for the administration to work with developers to develop land parcels. So can we have commercial building space for us to build a city gallery so the relevant space can be vacated for other developments? This is a topic being discussed in the community, so I'd like to know what the administration thinks. Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Why do we need a standalone city gallery? Why don't we rent an existing commercial building? We have actually collected views both inside and outside the council. Now that we have 2 major development projects, I don't have a crystal ball to predict the future. There may be other important development projects in the future. So we do need a decent gallery to showcase to Hong Kong and the world our development projects. So we really need a decent exhibition venue. If we simply rent a commercial building to have a gallery of this sort, it's not in line with our intention. So why don't we use a city gallery in Central? It's used to introduce the history of Hong Kong, and I believe many of you have been to City Gallery. The scale is quite small. It only occupies an area of some 900 hectares. Well, I mean 900 square meters. But for Wan Chai North, it already has an area of 5,000 square meters. For City Gallery, it has a total area of 3,000 square meters. For Gallery, however, it has GFA of about 8,000 to 10,000 square meters. It is mentioned the administration can save money when you invite the private sector to build the gallery. We considered building the gallery in the Northern District. It will be about 2027 when we have completed the gallery project. There are still a lot of places pending development in the Northern Metropolis. So there will be a gallery in an expansive piece of land. In Wan Chai North, however, the site is quite mature, is quite maturely developed. We can achieve synergy. We have the City Gallery nearby. When a visitor comes to Bohemia Square, they come to Hong Kong CEC, they come to the City Gallery, then they can come to the gallery and in Wan Chai North. That's exactly how we can achieve synergetic effect. Regarding costs, is it expensive? We have another agenda item about seeking funding approval. The construction costs are similar to other projects. They are not more expensive than other projects. I'm talking about government facilities or infrastructures. So there are still good points about having the gallery right here. For details, we'll give you more information in the relevant application for funding approvals. Just now, the Secretary already mentioned having a gallery in the city center. It will achieve promotion effect. Say Lok Ma Chau Loop, you have 100 odd hectares. There are 3 buildings. They will be in place by the end of the year. So why don't we have a gallery to attract enterprises and investments? Say Tianhai and Hengqin, we also have galleries. Can you explain? Why don't we have such facilities in the Northern Metropolis? Well, Chairman, you mentioned the Loop. The Loop is an INT site, innovation and technology, so we're not going to put any gallery in the Loop. In the Northern Metropolis, however, we have a couple of different smaller scale facilities. They showcase information about the Northern Metropolis. Be they locals or visitors, we also invite them to the community centers. Of course, the scale is a little bit different from the gallery we are planning. But in the Northern Metropolis, there are places introducing the Northern Metropolis. But in Wan Chai, the Hong Kong Academy of Performing Arts, of the Academy, we have a gallery to introduce the Northern Metropolis and Kao Yi Chau Artificial Island. Well, sorry, Mr. Edward Leung, I used some of your time to seek clarification from the administration. We are on the same point. Tianhai also has a large gallery. It's used to attract enterprises and invite investments. We're not against the concept of the administration, But when it comes to the development of the Northern Metropolis or even the Loop, when you lack such fundamental hardware and software, it'd be quite strange. Thank you.
多謝
Mr. Lau Kok-fan. Thank you, Chairman. Thank the Secretary and the Chief Executive for adopting our suggestions for the Northern Metropolis. I'm glad to see that we are having pilot sites for a large-scale land disposal approach, and the government will establish companies to develop industrial parks. We visited Shenzhen with the Secretary to look at commercial land parcels, and together with the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office, we also visited Xiaomeisha, where there are convention centers, hotels, and land of other uses in the same place. Apart from commercial uses, maybe we can incorporate blue and green tourism elements in the land parcels. That's my suggestion. Now, in terms of the company to be established, I hope that the Secretary will let us know. Apart from developing industrial park, will it be responsible for consolidating land parcels? Because in the new territories, there are Choton land, and there are lands that have been adversely possessed. Maybe the company can act like the land development corporation that we had before to consolidate land. We are having a number of works projects, and I'm concerned about cost and schedule. As I've asked in the Chief Executive Q&A session, the Chief Executive said that the Secretary will answer my question. In July, you published a notice to facilitate cooperation to government departments. That's a circular. Will you ask government departments to come up with an action plan so that members of the public know what kind of procedures will be streamlined, so that the government departments will act as a facilitator to revamp our old statutory procedures? We will be establishing a Building Technology Research Institute. Apart from the goals mentioned by the Secretary, will the Institute be reviewing the existing buildings ordinance? Because it's been in place for a number of years, there are standards in the ordinance that are outdated. I hope that you can incorporate this into the objectives and functions of the Institute. We should streamline statutory procedures, and we should review standards. Thank you. Secretary, regarding Mr. Lau's suggestions, we note them. As for the two questions, first, when we streamline approval procedures to facilitate development, well, in July we issued an internal circular to ask the relevant departments to improve and streamline their procedures. Well, the Undersecretary is leading a cross-departmental working group. How do our colleagues implement the measures set out in the internal circular? Well, our colleagues will have to report to their superiors. As far as I understand, the government departments have come up with more than 10 measures to implement the suggestions as proposed in the internal circular. I'll be glad to share with the Legislative Council when we have more details. The working group will also work on streamlining works procedures, because in the past few years, we focused on streamlining land resumption and town planning procedures, but there are still works plan, buildings plan, assessment, and standards, as well as inspection procedures that we can streamline. This will be the focus of the working group. One of the functions of the Building Technology Research Institute is to review the construction standards that we have been adopted for a number of years, including the standards for building. But that's different from the review of the buildings ordinance. For buildings ordinance, we want to review it to encourage owners to maintain and repair their buildings and to combat unauthorized building works, as well as to make sure that our works comply with regulations. But for the kind of materials that should be used to construct a building, that's the thing that the Institute will look into. Next, Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chairman. In the future, there will be 100,000 of people moving to the northern metropolis. Without the Kao-Cha Artificial Islands, we won't have the fifth cross-harbor road or rail link connecting to the Hong Kong island. Finally, in the policy address, it is said that we will undergo an environmental impact assessment, and the project will be set out in the gallery in Wan Chai North. I'm sure that what's been included in the gallery will be developed and executed. Some people question where the money would come from to fund these projects. There will be 2 stations to the rail link, one at Island A and one at Island B. For the 4th Cross Harbor Tunnel, they will pass through both Islands A and B. Maybe we can work on just 2 islands first. I always talk about high-end tourism. I think we can work on Lantau. What is Lantau, high-end tourism? I mean tourists who attend paid activities and they would spend. To attract this kind of tourists, we need to have new tourism infrastructures. The first chief executive, Mr. Tong, introduced Disneyland. It's not free of charge. As I've said multiple times, I hope that we can reclaim land off Sunny Bay to build a race course for car racing. But I've been talking about this for 7 years. When will we have the schedule for Sunny Bay reclamation? So I have a question for the Development Bureau. You said that in 10 years' time we will have 3,000 hectares of developable land. Have you included the 100-odd hectares of Sunny Bay reclaimed land? If you have included it, then I would be sure that you will reclaim land off Sunny Bay. In the policy address, only the eco-recreational corridors were mentioned. Are we talking about free of charge photos taking spots? That will not generate economic outcome. So what happens after you improve the beaches? Shouldn't we introduce small and medium hotels? Shouldn't we introduce parasailing, zip lining activities? After playing these activities, people can go to Disneyland. We should build a resort city. To achieve this, we have to build a road connecting the hotels to Discovery Bay and Mui Wo so as to create synergy with Disneyland, so that tourists can travel to all these facilities within 30 minutes. I know that the secretary is a very proactive person. Well, you have put your questions. Secretary. Chairman, the member is concerned about high-end tourism. and he's said many times that he wished that the government would reclaim land of Sunny Bay to construct a racecourse for car racing. We are studying the reclamation. We have to study it because Sunny Bay reclamation will affect Kaoicha Artificial Islands reclamation. As I've said before, for the rail link reaching Kaoicha Artificial Islands, we will be building a depot off Sunny Bay. As we are reclaiming land to build a depot for the rail link anyway, we will be providing other facilities on the piece of reclaimed land, and we're willing to explore possibilities. In Sunny Bay, there is a building height restriction because we have an agreement with the Disneyland. In Sunny Bay, if we are to develop, there will be building height restriction. Also because it's near the airport, there will be restrictions about noise levels. It's perhaps appropriate for us to develop recreational development in the area. In the 3,000 hectares of land, that is our 10-year forecast of land supply, about 60 hectares will come from Sunny Bay reclamation. So this shows that we are actually looking into the reclamation at Sunny Bay, and we hope that we can actually take forward the reclamation works. So these 60 hectares will be developed in the second half of the 10-year schedule. As for South Lantau, we will be developing ecotourism. Mr. Tan asked if we will industrialize it. You gave us a vision. Maybe we should offer adventurous activities and build high-end hotels there. Earlier this year, we proposed that in Cheongsha in South Lantau, we will be offering such facilities. In the invitation for expression of interest, we ask interested parties for their views on development of high-end hotels and development of adventurous activities. You talked about transport infrastructure. While South Lantau is a ecological sensitive area, we don't want to turn South Lantau into a busy bazaar. So apart from road transport, we'll also make good use of water transport, especially when we have such a beautiful water body. We should make good use of our fairways. Previously, we mentioned that we're exploring connecting South and North transport infrastructure network. One of our plan is to build a tunnel, but that's an expensive and complicated form of infrastructure. That's why we're still looking into it. Hopefully next year, when we have more details, we'll share it with you. Next, Mr. Chen Hakfeng. Thank you, Chairman. I am concerned about 2 points. The paragraph 17 of the paper, that is the review of the buildings ordinance. We want to tackle the building safety issue. You said that you will try to expedite building maintenance by reviewing the buildings ordinance. I don't have a problem with this, but then you said that you will introduce fixed penalty, increase simplify enforcement procedures, and rationalize threshold for enforcement action. By that, you are not expediting building maintenance, but expediting enforcement action. There are a lot of old buildings. Owners of these buildings are willing to maintain their buildings, but are not capable. That's why I've been asking the government to allow these owners to opt for government stepping in to maintain their buildings on their behalf. But I don't see such arrangement of defaulted works. Enforcement is not the way to solve problems. Neither is increasing penalty. I'm sure that most owners want to repair and maintain their buildings, but they don't have the ability to choose a good contractors. So I hope that you can introduce a government-led maintenance program. You can just ask the owners to pay you back. That wouldn't be a problem. According to paragraph 15 of the paper, it is said that a transfer of plot ratio and construction of rehousing estates will be adopted. For Kaohsiung Artificial Islands, the Secretary said that the project will be delayed. When most of the new sites are located in the northern metropolis, Hung Shui Kiu and Tsuen Wan residents will not be willing to move to the North District or Northern Metropolis. They will be perhaps more willing to move to Kaohsiung Artificial Islands because it's closer to the Victoria Harbor. Maybe we can rehouse Hung Shui Kiu, Kowloon City or Kowloon West residents who are affected by urban renewal to Kaohsiung Artificial Islands. If the rehousing estates are not located in the urban areas, the affected households will not be willing to move. Can you expedite the reclamation works for the Kaohsiung Artificial Islands?
Secretary. Thank you, Deputy Chair. In our review of the Buildings Ordinance, one of our goals is to encourage owners to perform repairs. Just now, members said when you increase the level of penalty, you are only going to increase the extent of prosecution as well. However, my experience last year is that some notices were not complied with, but after the Buildings Department increased penalty, more owners were willing to comply with the notices. There's indeed a correlation, but I agree with member that we shouldn't just rely on prosecution and penalty. That won't get to the root of the problem. Some owners require assistance indeed. So the Buildings Department already have a system in place that is defaulted works. More works are being handled by the Buildings Department. Some owners want to perform repairs, but the tendering exercises are too complicated for them. The URA introduced a system in which all the processes, including the tendering processes, are also handled by the URA. The owner simply needs to sign the paper. So we emphasize that we need to take a multi-pronged approach to encourage owners to fulfill their responsibilities. For those who fail to do so, we have the defaulted works mechanism, and we can also engage the URA to help them. But if the administration is to take the full responsibility and the owners simply need to pay, I'm afraid the administration couldn't do so. We have a lot on our plate. Manpower is tight. We need to focus our resources on projects that really need to be spearheaded by the administration. Regarding using new land to drive urban renewal, as the Secretary for Development, I don't believe my team or I would say that the Northern Metropolis is far. The development of the Northern Metropolis is important to Hong Kong. If on the one hand I said it's important, but on the other hand, it's so far away, it's just impossible. I won't say you shouldn't move to the northern metropolis. It is a very important growth engine. When the northern metropolis has a well-connected transport network, it's not far at all. It's indeed a very good place. But I do need to clarify, the studies we are conducting are not simply to encourage affected owners to move into the northern metropolis or other new development area (NDA). Instead, we can encourage other people to move into these areas, and for the areas vacated, we can encourage the owners in the old areas to move into these vacated areas. So I can say it's a win-win situation, but we are still reviewing the situation, so we'll give you more information in due course. Mr. Bill Tang, the Secretary said the northern metropolis is not far. Well, is the northern metropolis a new growth engine? I hope we can achieve it. So we can also solve the problem of SDUs, subdivided units. So SDU tenants don't necessarily have to live in the urban area. I do want the Northern Metropolis project to materialize soon. The Secretary mentions that she is attaching a lot of importance to yacht tourism. Yacht clubs, yacht association, they are very important stakeholders. Yaotong Bay, a U-shaped bay, there are stakeholders making proposals to the administration. For 200 yachts to be berthed, it will be convenient for yachts, and it will also drive yacht tourism. It will also be a new tourism destination. The policy address mentioned yachts, but you haven't yet taken on board using Yaotong Bay as a yacht association. I'm let down. Can the administration let me know your take on it? The paper also mentioned building design for elderly people. Elderly singletons need our support. We need to prevent elders from not being saved in time. In the mainland, there are existing practices. In Guangdong, there are smart meters or smart water meters. If in 12 hours water consumption is very low or it hasn't been activated yet, then it will send a message to the relevant department. Then the department will make a call to the elderly person to check on him or her. We can make wider use of technologies in order to protect elders. I hope the Secretary will work with the Labor and Welfare Bureau to protect elderly singletons. We can use low-cost technologies to help elderly singletons. More and more people are concerned about Kowloon East. Honestly, the policy address is quite silent on Kowloon East. But I believe with the full commissioning of the Kai Tak Sports Park, we can see the economic benefits that can be generated in Kowloon East. The role of the Energizing Kowloon East office used to be simply about planning and design, but it is also responsible for boosting economic development. But I understand it's not under the policy portfolio of the Secretary for Development. Can you collaborate with the ITIB and the CEDB so the CBD2 of Kowloon East will take lead in terms of industrial development? Secretary, thank you for your questions. To have a yacht club in Yaotong Bay, in theory, it should be spearheaded by a private enterprise. The land of Yaotong Bay we have several projects and they are private land. They are discussing with the administration land premium. I believe with the development of the private projects, the relevant private developers will decide whether they're willing to have a yacht club in Yaotong Bay. If they're willing, they can conduct basic technical study and then they can go to the town planning board for approval. It's related to housing development on land. We need to take it step by step, but we need to keep our mind open. We need to make good use of the water body and the promenade nearby. Regarding the elderly-friendly building designs, we are going to announce a raft of measures. The task group will be led by the Deputy Secretary, Financial Secretary. Membership includes the LWB as well, so we're working to help elderly people. But the review is about hardware, that is the building design, how we can design the buildings better. In relation to the installations in buildings, it is not appropriate to set down requirements in the buildings ordinance. We shouldn't carve these requirements in stone. Buildings are not just for the elderly. The population is aging. It's highly likely that the residents will be elderly people. So how can we have elderly-friendly installations in advance? How can we make it easier to build elderly-friendly designs such as 5G technologies? This is exactly the review area under the review this time. Regarding Kowloon East, how can we boost the economic function of Kowloon East? One office alone cannot perform this function. No matter how you are going to upgrade the function of this office, regarding how we can unleash the economic potential, all policy portfolios do have contributions to make. For example, we can make contributions, so do the CSTB, CEDB, ITIB. So we need to have awareness about how we can make contributions, and this will be more practical. Next, Mr. Gary Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. We can see a lot of concrete measures or innovative measures in the policy address. This is encouraging. Just now, the Secretary mentioned the focuses on the engineering stage, the construction stage. I look forward to taking stock of the works. Hong Kong is a metropolitan city, but Hong Kong is not that large. If we can put in place the transport infrastructure in the Northern Metropolis, I'm still confident in the transport infrastructure in the Northern Metropolis. Construction is very important to the development of the Northern Metropolis. One of the focuses is the support to the finance of companies. How can we make sure contractors have a healthy financial status so they won't be caught in financial difficulties in the middle of the project, causing works to be affected by overruns? Say performance bond. Will we consider using performance bond in infrastructure projects? Just now, we also talked about tourism development. My suggestion is that we should consider aligning with the development of low-altitude economy. The purpose is to create synergy. For details, they will be announced next year. But I'd like to ask about the background. In urban renewal and new area development, how will they be synergized? I understand details will only be available next year. But can you give us background information, telling us the logic? Thank you.
Secretary, thank you. The member asked how we make sure that the contractors will finish their projects. We will be the gatekeeper in this regard. Contractors that submitted the tender, well, we will vet them to see if they meet our qualifications and requirements before they can submit a tender. We have a number of payment schedule. We will only send a payment to the contractors after they've finished a certain part of the project. So we will be monitoring the progress of the projects. After the contractors have completed the works, we try to pay them as fast as possible. The Legislative Council is scrutinizing the construction security of payment bill. This is very crucial to the health of the contractor's finance. Now on to urban renewal and how we connect it with new area development. Well, we always say that we want to promote urban renewal. That's the goal of the government. For people affected by urban renewal, we have to rehouse them. When we have new sites, then we can rehouse these people with new developers. After selling their flats, they will be able to redevelop old urban districts. Can we completely rely on the market, or can we roll out measures to help these developers? We have this transfer of plot ratio measure to encourage developers to renew old urban areas. In Northern Metropolis, when we have new sites, what measures should we roll out to encourage residents living in the urban area to move here? They may not be the ones who are affected by urban renewal. By that, we will have spaces in the urban area. We hope that affected households will be able to be rehoused at, for example, dedicated rehousing estates. We will not completely rely on the market. The government has strategy and measures to encourage urban renewal. For details, I will come back next year to brief the members. The other question is about Flight Park. Well, maybe I will let the working group on the development of low-altitude economy work on that. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tony Che. Thank you. Sufficient land supply is very important to people's livelihood and the economy. Previously, because of insufficient land supply, a lot of issues arose. Now, in terms of fiscal position, the government is not in the right place, but still, the secretary is pushing ahead with increasing land supply. in developing the Northern Metropolis. I also fully support the fact that the government is inviting expression of interest for a lot of different projects. I think that the government did not do very well in soliciting market views. With so much unknown in the market, sometimes the government's terms and conditions do not align with the actual situation in the market. So I fully support the government's invitation for expression of interest for or before adopting the large-scale land disposal approach. After collecting the expressions of interest, how do we draft the plan? That's very important because some government officials may be overprotective and put all the blame on the participants. By that, the participants will be discouraged. I hope that we can be result-oriented, pragmatic. The government should be both the gatekeeper and the facilitator. I'd like to ask one question. After construction of the infrastructures and development of the land parcels, how do we connect different districts? How does the government coordinate? I'm worried that the newly developed land parcels will not be connected to other districts. Second, brownfield operators. Development affect them. Secretary said that they do have a plan. I'd like to ask about the rehousing of brownfield operators in multi-story buildings for modern industries. I'd like to ask about the progress. Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, member, for your reminder. We should implement the views that we collect. We have government infrastructures and facilities that will be built by the developers in the land parcels. Of course, the developers have to connect their roads to the ones built by the government. And the government will lay enough roads in the new land parcels to encourage the developers to build their developments there. We'll make sure that the 3 land parcels will be very well connected. Now, regarding brownfield operators, we currently mostly give out compensation and ex gratia allowance for the operators. We try to rehouse them. For Yunlong and Hung Shui Kiu land parcels, well, they're very large, especially the one in Hung Shui Kiu. Very recently, we started inviting tender for that piece of land, and the tender period will end in March next year. Why do we allow so much time for the submission of tender? That's because we've asked potential tenderers what they wanted to see and what they're worried about. Very often, we heard that they're worried about the need to submit 30% of gross floor area to the government, but they cannot do so for the site in Hung Shui Kiu. That's why we lowered the percentage to 20%. But 20% of gross floor area is still very substantial because the land parcel there is very large. They also said that they need a longer time to prepare for the tender. We want the tender to be successful. That's why we allow a longer time for submission. But this is only a facilitating measure. We need to resume brownfield sites, and there will be brownfield operators that need to cease their business. For brownfield operators that need outdoor space, we are still working on them. Now, in terms of progress, we have helped a dozen of brownfield operators obtain some land to continue to operate. And we have answered inquiries from hundreds of brownfield operators. Sometimes they don't need our help, but they need to know how to make the next move. We help a dozen of brownfield operators. After accumulating such experience, we hope that we will do better in the future. We cannot stop land resumption just because we have to cater to the need of brownfield operators. Next, Mr. Chang Han-pen. Thank you, Chairman. Regarding this policy address, especially the part on the Building Technology Research Institute, they will be reviewing our construction standards. I think that this is very important. With technological advancement, some of the requirements may be outdated. And I think that it's time for us to streamline and change some of our standards. Maybe we can lower some of them even. Hopefully, by that we can lower the construction cost. The government is also developing ecotourism. I also welcome that. For us to develop ecotourism or revitalize our economy, we should not just completely rely on the government. We should have the people participate. But for the people to participate in our economy, they sometimes have to apply for town planning. So I think that is great that the government is adopting this facilitator mindset. The Development Bureau has all along been a facilitator, but how do we make sure that other government departments and bureaus also adopt this mindset so that they will not try to wait out their projects because they're about to retire? Mr. Chan Kok-fung and I had come across cases where redevelopment took some 10 years. When we are to streamline procedures, I hope that the government will consider, first, for the role of facilitator, will there be any assessment or awards so that we can consolidate this culture in the government? Also, will you introduce a traffic light mechanism so that you will give out red light or green light to projects that have been delayed for too long so that we know which departments is efficient and which departments are not? Or maybe we should impose KPIs to also consolidate such culture. Also, in Chunwan and other districts, there's been redevelopment projects. In 2025, we will be updating the Chunwan outline zoning plan. But I think that urban renewal is difficult, and there are issues that cannot be resolved. Well, you may have relaxed the restrictions or requirements for mandatory auction, and now we have increased the borrowing ceiling for Urban Renewal Authority from $6 billion to $25 billion. Are we expediting redevelopment and urban renewal by raising the ceiling for URA? Do we have any more concrete measures to encourage interested parties to take part in urban renewal? Thank you.
Secretary, thank you. As for the role of facilitator, after sending the internal circulars, I will give the floor to the Undersecretary. Regarding Urban Renewal Authority, how can we help it with encouraging more urban renewal projects? Of course, we can't solely rely on the URA, Urban Renewal Authority. That's exactly why we need to fare better in the land compulsory sale for redevelopment ordinance. We increased the ceiling of loan to $25 billion. Up to $15 billion of the institutional bonds have been issued. The ceiling is $25 billion. The government has development projects through the URA. In some projects, the land premium is exempted. Land is actually a resource. Through different financial assistance schemes, the administration can kickstart projects that it wants to start. We do have major projects coming soon, but of course there are challenges. Even if we loan the maximum amount of the $25 billion, we may not be able to take care of all projects. But we will continue our discussion with the URA. I'll give the floor to the Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Chan. We issued an internal circular that is to handle applications as a facilitator. We also go to different departments to explain to them. We want to hammer home this concept. We issued the internal circular in July, and we requested that departments should consider 11 policy areas under which there are measures. Departments need to consider whether there are measures that they can implement. There are dozens of measures they have proposed right now. Dr. Chen mentioned some KPIs, traffic lights mechanism. These are exactly some measures proposed under the 11 policy areas. First of all, we require a timeline to be set for each project so we can monitor the timeline, we can monitor the progress, so we have an idea of the progress of the works. We also require departments to identify hiccups, and they need to report to their seniors internally. They need to seek guidance as soon as possible. So frontline staff will have timely assistance and guidelines. Well, I'm afraid it's difficult to have a guideline on the approval. Some staffers don't work on approval, and we also need to take into account the nature of the different projects. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip, I have 3 questions. They will be short. They are simple, straightforward questions. Ecotourism is mentioned in paragraph 130 in the policy address. I'm glad to see that the Secretary will develop Exlamakori site. The developer needed to work on infrastructures, and that's exactly why the project was shelved earlier on. What about now? We need to lay pipelines for fresh water and so on. So when will tenders start? Secretary, when we worked on the Islamakori site a couple of years ago, we used housing as the main theme. At present, this study is nearing completion. We hope to finish the study by the end of this year. It will give us a suggested use. We will use recreation, resort, outdoor high-end recreational activities as the main points. They don't have as strict requirements as housing would have required. As for housing developments, residents would have to go to the area and leave the area quite often. But we can combine the characteristics of a fishing village and hiking. So the infrastructure requirements won't be that high. It's possible to develop the area by way of a land parcel. We can outsource the area for for a developer to develop the area. We also have a water body of this area, say a yacht club. So we can combine recreational elements as well as entertainment elements. In the first quarter of next year, we will conduct a survey that is expression of interest to plan the future direction. Thank you. Next question, paragraph 150 of the policy address. We need to enhance the mechanism on recognition of professional qualifications. Is there any examination on GPA standards? What is the policy goal of having vocational skill certificate of 3 places? What is the purpose? Is it to import more overseas labor in order to reduce costs? Can you tell us the policy goal? In the interest of time, I will ask the third question as well. Paragraph 152. Mobilizing capital for joint investment in the GBA. Can you let us know what projects? Secretary. Regarding enhancing the mechanism on recognition of professional qualifications, 2 fronts. 1, professionals. That is the recognition of the qualifications of professionals. We also mention post titles in the document. That is the post title of engineers. In mainland, they have a special identity. When you have obtained the post title, how should I put it? It's a recognition of qualifications. When companies recruit professionals, they do require you to have a certain post title. It used to be only available in mainland. But on this occasion, this time round, we have tried to have a post title as well. Is it a title for a particular post? Yes, it's not that easy to have a post title. You need to attain quite a high level of qualifications in order to obtain a post title in the mainland. We want to extend it to the construction industry as well as other professionals in the industry. We start with the engineering profession. Regarding skilled workers, that is 1 examination, multiple certification. When you have passed 1 examination, you can work in 9 cities in the GBA and Hong Kong as well as Macau. You can practice in these areas. Your qualifications will be recognized. We are not thinking about importing laborers. As we emphasize in the paper, one of the guiding principles is that for Hong Kong, GBA, and Macau, we take the highest level of qualifications. That's what we strive for. We arrange for training by adopting the higher standards and covering more elements. That's exactly how we can enhance the level of laborers in the GBA. That will enhance the quality of the entire GBA. So we can enhance the level of standard of the Belt and Road as well as the GBA. That's a significant raise of the standard. Thank you, Secretary. Last member to speak, myself. Hong Kong is a metropolis. Two main factors for success: one, land; the other, talents. The Hong Kong SAR government in the past 2 decades hasn't been handling these areas well. There is room for improvement. I'm glad to see the current term government is determined to improve these 2 areas on manpower, on talents. We are aiming to attract high-end talents, high-caliber talents. The administration also understands we need skilled workers as well. They work hand in hand. So the Development Bureau has been working with the industry to import 12,000 workers in the construction industry. Despite issues to be handled, we can meet the present needs of the industry. I'm also glad to see something new in the policy address. We can introduce talents to come to Hong Kong. They are below the age of 35. In the coming 3 years, we can attract as many as 10,000 workers. This manpower gap of 10,000 people, we still have a lot to do. They only plug part of the gap. In the past few years, be it the Northern Metropolis or Kao Yi Chow reclamation, the government has a lot of plans. The Secretary today showed us a policy main point. That is to leverage market forces, by using large-scale land disposal. The Secretary mentioned we are going to have more than one developer for one land parcel. We may have more than one developer. We also have other industries to chip in. This is a proactive approach, but to succeed, we need to have business opportunities. Do we have sufficient policies to attract investors? I still have some doubts. For multi-story industrial buildings, for them to house brownfield site operators, that's quite a tall order. You need to be able to convey goods containers to the multi-story industrial buildings. The construction cost is very high. Even if it's financially viable, the operators will have to make good calculation. I'm not pouring cold water on you, but I do want the Development Bureau to think through the scheme. I want the administration's principle of infrastructure-led industry-driven to be successful. Just now, Mr. Tony Tse mentioned brownfield site operators have problems with resuming sites, and they are concerned about it. The Secretary mentioned something that can help these operators, but can you solve all the problems? We do need to delve into the issue further. The Secretary also mentioned reclamation projects in Long Ku Tan. but we need to have solutions that can help us right now. We can have precincts of the country parks to help us. We can make good use of these resources. In the course of development, some organizations lack financial resources to pay their workers. Workers lose their jobs, enterprises can't stay afloat. So no matter how good the future looks, it's not going to help in reality. So I hope the Secretary will maintain good communication with the industry in order to solve the above-mentioned problems. We need to achieve win-win situation so that our development prospects will look good. But right now, the industry is in dire straits. There are fewer private development projects. If there could be more public development projects, then that can meet the pressing needs of the industry. However, on the one hand, they are afraid that they can have sufficient jobs, but they are also afraid that there may be jobs, but there are no workers. Well, I'm sorry, I use more time. But I think I do need to reflect the actual situation to the Secretary. We shouldn't just reflect the good situation to the industry. We need to talk about how to realize the measures. Thank you.
好啊，主席。其實主席，如果你
Thank you. Chairman, you talked about difficulties faced by the construction industry. We know that there are fewer projects in the private market, and that is a problem for the construction industry. However, despite that, we have more public development projects. According to the figures of the second quarter this year, the construction sector is rebounding. But of course, we have to prepare for the worst. That's why in the coming few years, our public housing expenditure will be kept at $90 billion level. This is a rather high level of spending on the part of the government, but I have to be frank, we cannot completely rely on public housing projects to make up for the sluggish private market. The government is having a deficit. The issue cannot be offset. At this buffer period, maybe we can look into outsourcing smaller projects so that our private practitioners will have more jobs. And also in the policy address, a number of facilitating measures been set out. Hopefully, we will have more private residential developments in the future. And I think that would help the construction industry. When the private market revitalizes, then the construction industry will be able to start their projects with the streamlined statutory procedures. Hopefully, we will be able to control the situation. Thank you. That concludes the third item on the agenda. Thank you, Secretary, and your team for your presentation today. I've been very lenient with time management because I want to allow all members to speak, and I want to give enough time for the government officials to explain in details about their plan. Now we move on to the next item. That is funding applications for Santin Technopole. This is closely related to the policy questions that we asked earlier on. Would the government officials please enter the room? This item involves funding proposal. Would members please note that according to 83A of the Rules of Procedures, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please declare the nature of your interest before you speak. I'm sure that you're aware of the rule. Members who are interested to speak, please press the button. A lot of you have pressed the button. Welcome. Government officials, for attending the meeting, I will read out the members who have pressed the button. Mr. Gary Chen, Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, Ms. Chen Yip-ming, Mr. Vincent Cheng, Mr. Chao Man Kwong, Mr. Andrew Lam, and Ms. Wendy Hong.
咁啊，請政府代表咧會有。
Government officials will deliver a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Let me first say a few words, and then I'll ask Mr. Nick Yao, the head of NMCO, and colleagues from EEB to give you a PowerPoint presentation. We are here to seek funding. Well, we're here to brief members on 2 funding applications. First, regarding Sentin Technopole, we will take forward the project in 2 different stages. This funding application is about Phase 1, Stage 1 works of Sentin Technopole. It's about site formation and engineering infrastructure, road, sewage, drainage, fresh water, and works alike. It involves 158 hectares. The cost is approximately $30 billion. Apart from works in Sentin Technopole, this funding application would involve something that we've mentioned just now, that is a gallery for exhibition of major development projects in Wan Chai North. The second funding application is also related to the Northern Metropolis. That is the establishment of Sanpo Shu Wetland Conservation Park, detailed design for first phase. The Sanpo Shu Wetland Conservation Park is of some 38 hectares. First phase involves 150 hectares of government land. Our funding application will be about 150 hectares, and that also involves detailed design. $84.9 million are involved. This wetland conservation park is related to Northern Metropolis because the park can enhance the ecological value of the Northern Metropolis. Also, in the environmental impact assessment report of the Northern Metropolis, it is stated that we have to ensure that there is no net loss in ecological function. And to do that, we have to establish the Sanpo Shu Wetland Conservation Park, and that's one of the functions of the park. Now, I will give the floor to Mr. Yao. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that I have this opportunity to brief members on this important project, that is the Sentin Technopole. Northern Metropolis is a new growth engine for Hong Kong, and Sentin Technopole plays a very important role in this goal. This is where the Sentin Technopole is next to Lok Ma Chau and Sentin. Is at the central part of the Northern Metropolis, is near the Futian INT Park. Under the 14th Five-Year Plan, we are to develop ourselves into an international INT center. The position of Sentin Technopole is an INT development cluster that will be able to create synergy with the Shenzhen Park. This will help us develop a north-south dual engine of INT and finance, and allow us to create a new community that is of quality, healthy, and green. The town planning procedure has been completed last month, and we hope that we can start the works as soon as possible. And that's the speed that we want to achieve in developing the northern metropolis. Together with a loop, there will be a 300 hectares of INT land, creating 165,000 job opportunities with 50,000 odd housing units. The INT land to be developed will be able to meet the demand for INT land in the course of Hong Kong's development. That's the artist's impression of the Sandton Technopole. Here you can see the different stages of development. In the first phase, there are two phases. For the red part, it is the phase 1, stage 1 works that is in question today. That include new INT land as well as land on the two sides of the Sandton Highway. It's of 150 hectares. This plan breaks down the works into different categories. For the yellow part is about site formation and basic infrastructure work. The pink part is about road and relevant infrastructure. We also have works relating to the revitalization of drainage. No pond filling will be involved here. We will do that in phase 2, stage 1 works when we carry out the establishment of the Central Shu Wetland Conservation Park. And that's the type of land that we would generate in the area. The brown area is the INT land. They will be on the two sides of Sanshan Road. There will be other types of land, including housing. This slide, well, for INT area, it will cover 43 hectares. Hopefully, by the end of 2026, we'll be able to develop the first farmed site. We'll be able to offer some 5,500 to 6,000 units with population intake in 2031. There will also be other logistics land and commercial gross floor area of 15,350 square meters. There will also be government institution and community facilities, as well as pedestrian and cycling network. There will also be blue and green open zones, open space. We will conserve the third largest eager tree and enhance it into an open space. We will also expand the Sandton Highway, as well as building new distributors and trunk roads. We'll also build effluent polishing facilities as well as reclaimed water factories. We'll also put in place drainage and sewage systems. This shows our road works. The pink part is about the widening of the Sandton Highway. We'll build an 8 kilometers road, including distributors and roads in the districts, pedestrian walkway, and 8.5 km long cycling track. Here you can see the open space with green and blue elements. We want to enhance the flood prevention capability of our drainage system. We'll revitalize some of our channels. And thus, this image shows how we want to revitalize the channels. There are two main channels in the district, including the west and east main channel. After revitalization, hopefully their capability to discharge water will improve, and that we can provide open space on both sides of the channel. As mentioned, we will have a third largest acre tree in the district. Currently is being used for brownfield operators. Hopefully, by retaining it, we can turn it into an open space to improve the environment. We'll also improve the village environment. With the rail link to be commissioned, it will facilitate the commute of the existing villagers. By improving the drainage system, we can improve the flood resilience of the villages. We'll continue to talk to the villagers and offer them the latest information regarding the works. As mentioned, our infrastructure works, including drainage, sewage, and freshwater systems, which include a freshwater surface reservoir and a reclaimed water surface reservoir. Let me also brief members on the gallery to showcase major development projects. This project's been set out in the 2023 policy address as well as the supplement to this year's policy address. We want to establish a gallery to showcase to people the major development projects, including the Northern Metropolis and the Kawicha Artificial Islands. We propose to establish the gallery at Wan Chai North off Hong Kong Academy of Arts. It will be a 3 to 4 story high. The gross floor area should be about 8,000 to 10,000 square meters. We propose to adopt a modern and minimalist style, allowing visitors to experience the internal and external connectivity and unlimited potentials of the two strategic development projects. Hopefully, you can start the works in 2025 and commission the gallery by 2027. We try to position this gallery at a very convenient location. Some members ask if we will be establishing a venue in the Northern Metropolis to draw for talents and capital. As mentioned, we have community liaison center in different districts to offer not just conference room, but also a space for exhibition. In the Loop, in the Hong Kong Shenzhen INT Company Limited also has an exhibition hall to showcase the projects. In Kutong North, there will be similar community liaison offices and centers with space to showcase such projects.
I now turn to the affected persons. Regarding the land resumption proposal, it has already been gazetted. There's much government land, a total of 142 hectares, including 50, and there are also 54 hectares of private land. Some 216 residents will be affected. 236 operators will also be affected. Starting from the third quarter of next year, all the way through the second quarter of 2027, they will move out. We are handling compensation and rehousing matters at full steam. We will also provide assistance to business operators who want to be rehoused or reprovisioned. The lands departments and the relevant teams will maintain in close liaison with the relevant households and operators. The first phase of the construction works will start in 2024 and the target is to allow the first batch of population intake in 2031. As for money of the day prices, the construction cost is some $30 billion. We are still making adjustments to the cost. In the Public Works Subcommittee, we will provide an accurate estimate. Now, you can see the percentage points of the cost estimation. Site formation, road works, other infrastructure works, other expenses, and so on. So members can give us your views, and we will make an application for fund in the Public Works Subcommittee. I will now give the floor to Mr. Ng from the Environment and Ecology Bureau to brief members on the establishment of the Shampoo Shoe Wetland Conservation Park.
多謝，多謝主席。
Thank you, Chairman. In the 2023 policy address, please switch on the mic for Mr. Desmond Wu. Please switch on the mic. Am I coming through? Yes, thank you, Chairman. In the 2023 policy address, the Chief Executive proposed to establish Hung Shui Kiu Wetland Conservation Park to enhance the ecological quality of the northern metropolis as well as the biodiversity therein. We will introduce modernization as well as sustainable agricultural industries. We want to achieve no net loss in the ecological function. The consultant proposed 338 hectares of the park, together with the 10 hectares of the wetland compensation area managed by the AFCD. They will bring the total area to a total of 348 hectares. We recommend the biodiversity and aquaculture in harmony. We will also conserve and preserve birds to enhance biodiversity. We will have a series of measures and facilities to enrich the ecotourism experience among visitors and locals. We will also introduce modernized aquaculture facilities and techniques to enhance the catch quality in order to bring about economic benefits and create jobs. Regarding wetland enhancement measures, we will increase pond area to enhance connectivity. We will also modify pond habitats to increase environmental carrying capacity. It's easier for water birds to forage in shallow waters. We will also enhance gateway habitat. In concrete terms, we will make it easier for water birds to forage, and we will also set fences as well as restricted areas. There will also in order to provide more facilities for visitors, we will have walkways, information board, as well as bridges. There will also be an office in the area. We will create IoT sensors and central monitoring systems. That is to monitor the systems in the park. We propose phased construction of the works. In the first phase, 150 hectares of government land, we want to seek funding approval from the development panel to apply for $84.9 million, covering park offices as well as other works, such as green works. For the next stage, we are going to prepare the tendering documents as well as the relevant documents. The dotted line shows the boundary of Hung Shui Kiu Wetland Conservation Park, covering 300 or so hectares. The area in yellow, marked in black lines, is the wetland compensation area. For the remaining yellow area, that is the area of some 150 hectares. As for the timeline on the Hung Shui Kiu Wetland Conservation Park, in the fourth quarter of this year, we will seek funding approval regarding the detailed design. In the second half of 2025, we'll start the detailed design work, and we expect to finish in 24 months. In 2026 to 27, we plan to finish the detailed design of the first phase, and we'll start the construction works right away. The first phase of the works will be completed in 2031. By the end of 2039, we expect to complete the park and will align with the full commissioning of the Santine Technopop STT. We consulted green groups, ecological tourism industry, and local agriculture and fishery organizations or groups. We also consulted the above stakeholders, including Yunlong District Council. We also reported to the House Committee of the Legislative Council. We have the support of the members on one of the subcommittees under the House Committee. Thank you. The works are quite complicated. 10 members have requested to speak, and me, a total of 11. 4 minutes each will. And I believe the meeting today will run until 6 o'clock. I believe members won't mind. This is a very important project, but we need to manage the time well. 4 minutes question and answer is included. Mr. Gary Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the establishment of the Wetland Conservation Park. I agree, that is the general direction. Northern Metropolis is a very important development. I agree. Regarding the design and planning, it's quite primitive, so to speak. Regarding the geographical location, it does have the potential to become a very important brand for Hong Kong. So visitors to Hong Kong will gravitate towards this park. In Singapore, they have gardens by the bay. One year, they attract millions of visitors to the area. This is important to the development as well as the image of Hong Kong. We have recreational facilities. We have boardwalk. We also have kiosks of bird watching. But that's not enough. In a detailed design, don't let this area go to waste. We need to make it a landmark in the Northern Metropolis. This will be beneficial to the image of Hong Kong. Aquaculture, high-density development, these are mentioned. When you come to the PWSC, you need to give us concrete indicators. Don't just give us adjectives. Don't just give us descriptions. You need to show us details. You need to tell us figures, the targets as well. Next, a question about principles. Regarding STT Santine Technopop, the gallery will be the funding of the gallery will be sought together with the Santine Technopop project. But the provision is quite substantial, $600 to $700 million. We're not just talking about the Northern Metropolis, we're even talking about the Kao Yi Chao Artificial Island. Should you seek funding approval independently? Should it be a standalone project? Will it be better arrangement? Regarding the provision of $600 to $700 million, you only have several paragraphs. Usually, we have more details when the amount is large. I support this project, but I don't think these projects should be tied together. Thank you.
Let me first answer the question regarding the Northern Metropolis Gallery. You only have 4 minutes in total. Well, the gallery will cost about $600 to $700 million. The information is set out in the paper is rather simple. That's true. In the paper submitted to the Public Works Subcommittee, we will give you more details on the breakdown of the $600 to $700 million and how the cost compared to relevant government projects of similar scales. As to whether it's appropriate for us to tie this project up with other projects in the Northern Metropolis, well, for funding applications on other new development areas, we often include the construction cost for community liaison centers that are used to showcase new projects. So such arrangements has been adopted in the past. We note the members' view. We will add more information in the papers to be submitted to the PWSC. EEB, you have 2 seconds left. Sorry, your time is up. Thank you. We will include more details on the estimates of the benefits to be generated by the aquaculture in the Sanpo-shu Wetland Conservation Park. For the park, we focus on the coexistence of aquaculture and biodiversity, as well as their harmony. That's why we focus on the ecological value of the park, and we will give you more details about this in the paper to be submitted to the PWSC. I agree with what Mr. Gary Chang said. It's not appropriate for you to bundle the gallery up with the other projects under the Northern Metropolis, because this piece of land in the Wan Chai North is very valuable. This is a very rare piece of land that is vacant in Admiralty and Wan Chai. Shouldn't we make good use and full use of the land? Shouldn't we exhaust the plot ratio? Shouldn't we relax the plot ratio to add more stories to the buildings so that we can accommodate for other functions? I don't think that there will be enough time for us to discuss all of these if you bundle all these projects up in a single document. I think you have to separate the gallery item out from the funding application. Next, Mr. Lau Kwok-fan. I support the Sentin Technopole funding application because the Technopole is very important to the Northern Metropolis, is an important growth engine for Hong Kong. For Kutong North and Fanlin North, as mentioned by the Chief Executive, we're reaching our harvest period. We're going to have housing very soon. For us to develop Sentin Technopole, we need land. As set out in the Northern Metropolis Action Agenda, there will be 2 5-year periods, and this year marks the first year of the first 5-year period. In 2024, we are able to rezone the land and resume the land, and within 2 years, we will be able to complete the site formation for development. But regarding this $30 billion funding application, I have a few questions. First, in Sentin, we have a lot of wetland zones and sites. Have you taken into account the fact that you have to form wetland sites? Because it's rather difficult to do so. There are 3 modes of development for Sentin Technopole. I wonder if you will leverage on the private market in the phase 1 and stage 1. You have a land exchange approach, and you also have a large-scale land disposal approach. As the government said, we will have land parcels in Sentin Technopole. I wonder if it will exist in phase 1 and stage 1. The third type of approach is direct land grant. The government said that they don't have to wait until 2026 when the site is formed before they invite particular industries to develop, and the government will grant land directly to these developers to introduce new industries into the Sentin Technopole. So For large-scale land disposal approach, direct land grant or land exchange approaches, they will differ in terms of cost. Have you accounted for these factors, Secretary or Permanent Secretary? Thank you. Regarding the $30 billion, that's an estimate. We're still looking into whether there is room for reduction. The reason why we have to spend so much to farm the site is because of the nature of the land. The cost of this project is higher than others because we have to build infrastructures for the entire Santin Technopole, not just for this stage, and that's why the cost is higher. In the future, we have 3 modes of development. We have large-scale land disposal approach and direct land grant. If we adopt different approach, we'll be able to save money. It will, because the cost will be lower than if we resume all the land by ourselves, that is by the government. For regarding land exchange, we won't be adopting such approach too much because we don't have a lot of residential sites, but commercial sites only. What about direct land grant? Well, for direct land grant, you are referring to INT land. Well, we have to see what the view of the ITIB is regarding this. Next, Ms. Chen Yuming. Thank you. I fully support the development of Santin Technopole. A lot of members have asked about the cost, so I will ask about rural-urban integration. Santin Technopole is a flooding black spot. It is said that the works will be able to improve the flood resilience of the villages. A lot of indigenous villages will be surrounded by the Santin Technopole. I hope that when we are implementing urban-rural integration, the government will undertake that they will connect the indigenous villages to the public sewage systems, so that they don't have to continue to use the septic tank. There are some 200 to 300 small houses in the villages, and they are not properly maintained. On this topic of urban-rural integration, please deal with this issue by seizing this opportunity. Now, regarding the closed area, with the increase of population in the district, I think that residents need to make use of Lokma Chao to commute. But because it's a closed area, residents are not able to make use of Lokma Chao to commute. I raised this issue to the Security Bureau, but it has not been addressed. With the development of the Huanggang port, there will be land that will be made available. Will the government work on improving the arrangement on the closed area so as to unleash the opportunities in the area and to improve the transport facilities and arrangement for residents? Well, I will ask the Lands Department to talk about drainage and freshwater, as well as sewage systems, and how they can help the 11 villages in the Santin Technopole right now. Regarding the closed area issue, we will relay that to the Security Bureau. Ms. Chan also talked about the traffic issue. The Northern Line main line will only be commissioned in 2034. That's true, but for the first population intake, it will happen in 2031, but not a lot of people will be living there by then. I think that we should rely on shuttle bus, and by then the Kutong station will be commissioned. Maybe we can provide shuttle bus or feeder bus for these residents to reach Kutong station. And I think that the bulk population intake will be able to take advantage of the Northern Link main line to be commissioned in 2034. Next, Mr. Vincent Cheng. Lands Department, please. Thank you. Regarding Sentin Technopole, we will adopt the latest standards published in April this year of the Drainage Services Department. We have also taken into account the rainstorm in September last year. We have enhanced the design standards and the stormwater capacity. We will be revitalizing 2 main channels, enhancing the flood resilient capacity of the channels. Currently, stormwater flow to ponds and villages. In the future, the stormwater will go to the drainage system, which lower the flood risk of the existing villages. In the upstream of Sentin Technopole, there will be a flood retention area that can house 230,000 cubic meter of storm water. This will alleviate the load of the drainage system in the downstream and also reduce the flood risk. Sorry, Chairman, time is almost up. Will they undertake to solve this sewage problem? Well, in Sentin Technopole, we will also consider the needs and demand of the villages in terms of sewage. And we will set aside capacity to accommodate the needs of the existing villages. And this will improve the hygiene of the villages. Thank you. What about unauthorized building works? Maybe you can follow up after the meeting. I hear that the administration is not afraid to undertake that they would do it, but as for whether the plan will be implemented, that depends. Mr. Vincent Cheng, thank you. I support the Sentin Technopole, but I'm concerned about the $30 billion construction cost. Maybe the government will brief us further when they have the paper for the PWSC. I hope that the Development Bureau will lower the cost because our finance is very tight. Please try to save money as far as possible. I hope that when we have the paper on the PWSC, we will see the cost being lowered. Regarding the gallery at the harborfront of Wan Chai North, I hope that they will submit a separate paper. For Chinese Culture Gallery, we've been talking about it. We've looked at the galleries around the world and our country. I hope that the administration will let us know what their plans are, so that when tourists come, they will learn more about our development. Second, as I've mentioned previously, next to the City Hall, there is a City Gallery already. 2 weeks ago, I went there. I think that the City Gallery is a waste because it's not patroned by a lot of people. I think that there is duplication of functions between the City Gallery and the gallery that you're proposing today. Can we combine the two? Because we have a shortage of culture, tourism, and sports venues, maybe we can give the City Gallery to the City Hall. I'm not just talking about construction cost, but that piece of land is very valuable. I don't want to see it go to waste. Maybe the Development Bureau can submit a separate paper.
P.S. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. The price tag $30 billion, we will review it. And in the next meeting, we'll submit more information to explain the cost. How does it compare with other projects, and we will also seriously consider any downward adjustments. I understand we need to save costs as much as possible regarding the gallery. As I heard from Mr. Chang and Chairman, we will take it out from this project and we will submit 2 funding applications as 2 standalone items. That is to allow sufficient time for members to discuss and vote. Member mentioned the City Gallery. In the previous discussion item, the Secretary also explained briefly that the City Gallery is quite small. It only has 3,000 square meters. It can, the area for hosting exhibitions is even smaller. It used to be an office with the ceiling being 2 meters high only. So is it suitable for hosting a gallery or should it be dedicated for other use? We discussed it with the CSTB as well. For this new gallery to be set up in Wan Chai North, members said, now that we have a new gallery, do we still need the City Gallery? We will review the situation. But as things stand, we do need a place to showcase the overall planning of Hong Kong as well as ecological conservation, green life, and so on. Should it be hosted in the City Gallery, we will give it some thought. Or in the upcoming papers, we will give you more information. Next, Dr. Chow Man Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I want to ask about finance. We don't have a lot in the public coffers right now. The construction cost is $30 billion. For other expenses, say the gallery, other expenses, consultancy charge, the cost is $6 billion. It indeed needs to be compressed. We need to be accountable to the public as well. This is close to the heart of the public as well. 43 hectares, phase 1, stage 1 for INT, only 27% of the entire project. The ratio is quite small, but the amount is quite large. If we need to spend 300 hectares on the INT site, only 14%. So it seems to be quite expensive. President Xi had an important direction, and I believe there will be upgrading and transformation in the area. That is the state-level economic and technological development area. If we fail to compress the cost, this is not what we want to see. We need to upgrade and transform. We need to enhance the project in terms of the figures, finance, and so on. P.S. Thank you. I'd like to talk about the construction costs. I understand concerns of member. In this stage, 43 hectares of INT sites. There are also other types of sites that will be created, say housing, logistics, public facilities, roads, and so on. So at this stage, there will be 158 hectares covering 43 hectares of INT sites. Regarding the construction cost, as we mentioned, we'll go back and take a closer look at the construction cost. We'll try to bring it down. $30 billion divided by 158 hectares, the unit cost, as we calculate, may still be more expensive than other development areas. But if we take out these special features, the unique features from the project estimate, we make an estimation once again is actually comparable to other development areas. So what do I mean by the special unique features in this project? Member mentioned this area is close to sea. So in terms of soil quality improvement, we need to spend money on it. For infrastructure, say sewerage, water supply, they aren't simply for the 158 hectares of development area. It's for the entire Santin Technopole, covering 540 hectares of land. That's exactly why the construction cost is higher. But the unit cost is comparable to other development areas. Well, Cyberport, not quite digital, but for Santin Technopole, we need to focus on technology. Mr. Andrew Lam, Deputy Chair. Thank you, Chairman. My questions are on two fronts. The EIA on STT is subject to a judicial review right now. I believe the administration has already been considering the risks involved. I understand in the middle of judicial proceedings, the administration is not in a position to divulge some details. But I'd like to know the broad direction. Does the administration have sufficient confidence infrastructures, including sewage system, water supply system, roads? Without these, it's difficult to take the first step. So, how can you be not affected by the judicial review results? If you have confidence, what is the basis? Just now in the introduction, you talked about eager trees. And I know that there is only one tree in the eager tree, but you call it an eager tree. It shouldn't be just one tree. The administration needs to be pragmatic when it comes to conservation. From the perspective of education, I'm not saying it's good. But it's surrounded by brownfield sites. Why can it still be the third largest eager tree? You need to think from the perspective of education. We need to base on science as well. When you work on this project, I hope you can heighten public awareness about the objective conditions and the cost of conservation. I used the eager tree as an example, but my expectation is that the Shampoo-Shu Wetland Conservation Park can showcase the details and the considerations involved. I'll first take the first question, and then for the eager tree and Shampoo-Shu question, I will invite my colleague from the CEDD and the EEB to give you more information. First of all, you mentioned the judicial review. We understand the judicial review may impact on the implementation of the project. We need to tread cautiously. We are in close liaison with the team of lawyers so that we can be in a better position to prepare for the judicial review. The STT project is very important to the future of Hong Kong. Before knowing the result of the judicial review, we shouldn't pause any preparatory work. So we need to continue with the TPB procedures. Then we need to seek funding approvals to kickstart the construction works. It's not about whether we should do it. It's about how we can cautiously and carefully do it. We also reduced the concerns and disputes over this project to a minimum. As Mr. Vigyao mentioned, the funding application does not cover any pond filling works. As the bone of contention of the judicial review is about pond filling, well, you've used up your time. Please be succinct. You said you would have to ask your colleagues to answer as well, so please be succinct. For construction works contracts, we will also add more provisions to protect the interests and rights of the government. I'll give the floor to Mr. Zhang. Egrets, well, when it comes to egrets hide in trees as their habitats. In the AIA report, the egret tree is a technical term, but we understand members' concern. In the egret tree, we will use it as a recreational space. We wanted to mesh well with the egret tree that is in habitat for egrets. Chairman, Mr. Perigil will also ask questions, so we may go beyond 6 o'clock. But anyway, we will finish this item today. The STT will be taken forward in 2 stages. There will be 5,000 to 6,000 residential units in public housing. Job-living balance is the focus. 112,000 jobs. Some employees will live in tenant apartments. The number of INT workers will be limited, and this will cause a mismatch between jobs and living. Is it running counter to the objective of job-living balance? Does it reduce the appeal of STT? Do workers live in Shenzhen and then they need to come to the urban area in Hong Kong? Will it also affect private developers' preference to develop private housing in Hong Kong? There are different INT land parcels including AI, health science, and so on, or R&D, batch production, testing, and so on. I'd like to know the flexibility of land. There are many factors and uncertainties in R&D. When you introduce dozens of SMEs, there could be different uses and functions, and if we don't have sufficient planning, that will stifle the development in the future. Regarding the gallery in Wan Chai North, I heard quite some disputes. There will be a community liaison center in Wan Chai North. So if the city gallery is no longer suitable and you must build a gallery in Wan Chai North, will you consider using the MIC method, mirroring the concept in light public housing? On the one hand, you can save construction costs. On the other hand, when you move the gallery to the North Metropolis, you can give us valuable land resources. Thank you.
Permanent Secretary, 3 questions. First, the housing sites are mostly used to build dedicated rehousing estates and public housing. Well, regarding the 43 hectares of INT land, we can build talent accommodations there for our INT talents. And this place is near Kutong North, and in Kutong North, we have rapid development, and a lot of housing will be ready very soon to support the development of Shengjin Technopole. The member is also concerned about whether we can accord more flexibility to the use of land in the Sentin Technopole. That's what we're thinking as well. For INT sites, we try to include as many uses as possible. As for regulations, we try to put that in the land lease to reserve the maximum flexibility for such INT land in the Sentin Technopole. As for the adoption of modular integrated construction method, we note that we will consider it. Next, Mrs. Regina Ip. Thank you, Chairman. My first question has to do with the judicial review. I completely agree with what the Permanent Secretary said, that we should not suspend the Sentin Technopole just because of the judicial review, because it's such an important project. This Permanent Secretary that said that they will not be filling pond at this stage. So does that mean that regardless of the results of the judicial review to the EIA, you will carry out the project? With the leave proved, there should be legal aid. For any court cases, you may win and you may lose. Sometimes you have to make amendments. If you are required to amend your plan, will that affect your funding application of $30 billion? Permanent Secretary. As to whether the judicial review will affect our works, that depends on the ruling to be handed down by the judge. At this stage, all we can do is to enhance the safety coefficient and lower the risk. So what have we done? For this stage of the works, no pond filling is involved because the controversy of the judicial review relates to the ecological impact brought about by pond filling. So at this stage of the works, we have not included the pond filling works. I want to take some time to explain more about how we reduce the risk of judicial review. For the works contract, we will add provisions to protect the interest of the government. We may introduce flexibility for us to cater to different scenarios. Regarding the effectiveness of the tender document, we will extend it. We will also add conditions to the works contract that if the judicial review affects the works, how should we deal with that? We will set that out in the works contract. Through these measures, we try to minimize the impact brought about by the ruling of the judicial or outcome of the judicial review to our works project. My second question has to do with your gallery and the Northern Metropolis. I think that the gallery is very expensive. You haven't given us much details. Do you have to use such a beautiful piece of land next to the harbor? It seems that you're trying to reserve the land next to City Hall. Is the government taking up too much land at the harbor front? Because the harbor front sites could be used to develop tourism. I hope that you can think twice about the location of the gallery. You shouldn't be keeping all the galleries with the same functions. We note the members' view. We will consider it. But I'd like to take this opportunity to explain why we pick the site at Wan Chai North. It's a prime location. We think that for tourists and locals who want to know more about our major development projects, they can come to the gallery. On the outline zoning plan, this site is reserved for community, government, and institution uses. It's not a commercial site. So we think that the gallery is in line with the intended land use for this piece of land. As to how we create synergy with the City Gallery, we'll think about that and we'll give you more details in the paper to be submitted later on. Next, Mr. Duncan Chiu. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. Although I'm not a member of the panel, the I&T industry has been concerned with the development of the Sentin Technopole. I'm sure that the I&T sector fully support the project. Hopefully, the Technopole will be commissioned as soon as possible. There are a lot of facilities to cater to the I&T industry, but as we're attracting enterprises, as far as I understand, we can only allow new companies to set up their companies or presence in Sentin Technopole or the Loop. I want to have a schedule and timetable. When can we tell the new enterprises where they can go to and what the conditions of these are? After approving the $30 billion to you, when will we be able to give the enterprises who are interested to come more details so that they can make their own calculations? They have to compare Hong Kong to other cities. If we delay the project, that will affect our efforts in trawling for talents and capital. Second, I also share the view that the cost of the gallery is too high. You have not included the operational cost in the paper. You can simply establish a website if you want to showcase your major development projects for students to browse. What more can we do by having a physical gallery than having an online website? After commissioning the gallery, we may have to mobilize students to visit. These are my concerns. Thank you. Permanent Secretary. 2 questions. First, regarding the schedule of Sentin Technopole, with the funding applications approved, hopefully by the end of this year we can commence our works. We expect that the first batch of the I&T sites will be ready in 2 years, that is by 2026. As for the rest, they will be completed afterwards. So the first batch of sites will be ready by 2026. In other words, enterprises that are interested to set up their presence in Sentin Technopole may make use of the sites that have already been formed, and they can start building on top of it. We have talked to the ITIB. I know that they are conducting a consultancy study on the land use. Secretary Professor Sun Dong will start trawling for enterprises, and we do have a schedule. The member also gave us his comment regarding the cost of the gallery and whether it's necessary for us to have a physical gallery. We have compared the cost of the gallery to similar projects, and we think that the cost is comparable. Is it necessary for us to have a physical gallery? Well, over the past years, a lot of people told us that it's best for us to have a physical gallery to showcase our major development projects, and they asked us to incorporate I&T in the gallery. When we brief members next time on the project, we will respond to your concern in detail. Next, Mr. Tsuen New. Thank you, Chairman. I have a few questions. First, Sentin Technopole is a part of the Northern Metropolis, so I definitely support the funding application. Home job integration hinges on whether there is economic activities in the area. If you tell us that there are a lot of enterprises who are about to set up their presence in the Tsuen Technopole, then people will be more confident to move in. Maybe we should establish a plan for the land use outside of the 40 hectares of INT sites, because people have to look for a job. The lease have been approved for the judicial review. How long does the government expect the judicial review to last? Of course, the applicant would want to win, but then it would also be a win for the applicant if the project can be delayed. So how do you assess the risk involved? Third, the FTU and Mr. Luk Chung-hong said time and again that we should purchase electricity from the mainland or reform our electricity plan to lower our electricity costs. Because Tsuen Technopole is about industry, operators and businesses are concerned about electricity costs. Do we have any breakthrough? Permanent Secretary, thank you. 3 questions. First, regarding home job balance. It is one of our key principles when we design the Tsuen Technopole. We hope that the INT land and other industrial land will be able to bring about job opportunities. We estimate that we will be able to create 160,000 jobs in the area. In the urban area, we will have 50,000 housing units. So we think that we will be able to strike a balance between home and job for the people. Second, you ask about the time to be taken for the judicial review and if we have made any risk assessment. We've looked at previous judicial review. For the first decision to be reached, it will take some 1 year time upon the filing of the application. So I believe that the judicial review will take a long time. As I've mentioned, we will continue to take forward our project in a prudent manner in consultation with our lawyers. Third, you talked about whether we should purchase electricity from the mainland. We heard similar suggestions very often, and I think that the Environment and Ecology Bureau will consider it. They have to look into the stability of electricity supply. We will relay your suggestion to them. Next, it's my turn. I have a few questions. First, the Tsuen Technopole and its vicinity will house public and private housing. What is the ratio? And what is the split? If we still adopt the public-private housing ratio of 70-30, it will not be appropriate. As you can imagine, in an INT hub, we have to have talent accommodation. Workers there would be middle-class people. If the ratio of public housing is too high, then there will be a problem. We won't have enough jobs for public housing residents, and these people will have to work in another district. That's why we must address this issue squarely. We shouldn't be just blindly focusing on building public housing units. That will not benefit the Shanting Technopole, nor the residents there. You may look at Shenzhen. They have a number of INT land parcels. Please look at the housing split that they have there and what types of housing they have in the INT sites. For Shanposhu Wetland Conservation Park, you shouldn't just leave the place alone. We have to conserve and introduce new technology to enhance our work in our conservation. I know that there will be fisheries research center in the park, and there will also be new aquaculture systems. I think that we have to ask whether the relevant, if there is any INT enterprises who are interested in setting up presence there. Because you're asking funding for research, that's why you must engage INT enterprises. My third question, a lot of members have asked about this, the gallery. First, if you think that the city gallery is not suitable for exhibition, maybe you should just demolish it. From what I heard, I don't think that this gallery is for attracting talents and capital. In Shanghai, they have an exhibition hall to draw for talents and capital, and after the visitors has visited the hall, they can pick a site immediately, and the staff there would give them an estimation on the cost of talent and businesses. But then your gallery is for visitors, tourists, students, to tell good stories of Hong Kong. If that's the purpose of the gallery, why don't you just include the facilities in the city hall or city gallery? You said that the headroom is low and the space is small. Why don't you just set up smaller exhibitions, single site, multiple use? Maybe you should set aside a few stories for the gallery and set aside another few stories for other purposes that are appropriate. You must consider these very carefully. I also thank you for taking on board my view. You will not bundle the two funding applications up. And please consider the questions that I raised. Thank you. You don't really have to respond to it. I'm just giving you my views. Hopefully, you can proceed with your projects smoothly, but you have to answer and address the concerns that I raised.
Chairman, well, if you want to apply, yes, please. Regarding private-public housing split, while we were undertaking the study, that is the infrastructure capacity, we looked at several scenarios. Right now, the split ratio is 7:3. We also took a look at 6:4 and 5:5. In other words, the private split will be higher. Well, P.S. Well, I don't want to listen to hard and fast figures. 7:3, 6:4, they are meaningless. You need to consider what kind of talents you need. Private housing, public housing, can they have jobs in the same area? If you give me hard figures, no, you can't answer my question. Next, Mr. Perry, you. Well, sorry, I pressed the button quite late. First of all, I need to express support for the Shanting Technopole project. I look forward to its commissioning. My concerns are quite similar to Chairman's. Regarding Champushi Wetland Conservation Park, it's the first one with the theme of biodiversity and aquaculture. There are visitor centers, birdwatching houses, ecological facilities, and so on. Of course, I'm concerned about the future design of the park. More education elements, more conservation elements, more technology elements. Then we can develop ecotourism. It will be an important place. Aquaculture, we'll have the entire production line. Then it will draw more visitors. On the gallery, for a city to have gallery to introduce the planning and major developments of a city, I believe we do need this gallery, and the city gallery is already performing this function. During the pandemic, I encourage the industry to explore more tourist attractions. We identified the city gallery as well. There were tours leading locals to the city gallery to walk them through the major developments of the city. Locals have limited knowledge about the city gallery, but the contents are indeed very good. Students, tourists, they'll have a good understanding of the city's development. I believe the city gallery does have its own value. There's also value about it as a tourist attraction. Fenwick Pier, I agree with Chairman. Is it possible to combine all these galleries into one gallery, so we won't have multiple galleries introducing different themes or construction works? It will be more difficult for you to attract visitors to different galleries. The gallery will introduce the Northern Metropolis and the Kao-Yi-Cha Artificial Island project. What about the city gallery? Visitors need to go to the city gallery to understand more about the overall development of Hong Kong. We need to combine the concepts of different galleries. We need to introduce the major development and construction projects so visitors can go to one single gallery to have a one-stop shop. This will be a one-stop shop to introduce all the developments of Hong Kong to visitors. Any response from the PS? I will take the second question. The first question, I will pass it to the EEB. I've heard members' views. We'll go back and consider your point. When we come back to the panel once again, we will give you more details about the correlation between the city gallery and the new gallery to be set up. Do we still need two different galleries? Can we combine these two galleries? We'll think about it. Well, all members have already asked questions regarding the funding proposal about the STT. I didn't hear any objection. That also includes the Champushi Wetland Conservation Park. No objection either. Regarding the galleries, all of us are on the same page. We do want to combine the galleries. So I hope the administration has already heard members' views on galleries. Land resources are finite. They are valuable. We need to consider single-site multiple use. It's necessary. Although it's not directly related to this topic, in the future, when you develop the Northern Metropolis, when you attract enterprises and talents and investments, you need to You need to give them sufficient information when enterprises visit these areas. You don't really have to build a permanent gallery or exhibition center. Say, Tianhai and Hangqing, as well as Lok Ma Chau Loop, the HSITP. Members needed to go up the slope to take a look at the area. Regarding this funding proposal, the Development Bureau needs to think about these questions. The Lok Ma Chau Loop may be under the purview of another bureau, but regarding the overall planning and development, the responsibility rests with the Development Bureau. Any more comments, questions? That's the end of this agenda item. No any other business? Next meeting? When's the next meeting? Well, I already said that the next meeting will be held on the 26th of November. 26th of November, 2:30 p.m. Thank you, members. Meeting adjourned.